Let's take a look at Madden 25 versus Madden 24 side by side to see some of the more important changes and the visual differences. And if you want to know about Madden 25 current gen versus old gen, I'll have that video coming soon as well. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of these important Madden 25 updates all year. We're officially on the road to 700K. Thank you guys for 600K. Let's keep running it up. First, we're going to start with the pre-game presentation. So on the left, you can see is 24. On the right is 25. They made it feel a little bit more like an NFL broadcast, in my opinion, this year. They've got multiple different shots of players warming up, and there's different variations of this, so you won't see the exact same one every time. Last year, they were doing more of the cinematic, kind of big game feel, which I didn't really mind last year's either. I know a lot of people weren't crazy about it, but I do like players warming up on field more if I had to pick. Now, they also still show players running out when it's time for the game to start, so you still get the different runouts, and the runouts are mostly, the same. They might show some different angles, but the runout stuff is pretty much the same as it's been for the last year or two, but the biggest difference is the warming up on the field and things like that, as you can see, and then it's about time to start the game after you get past that part. Now, here I'm just jumping straight to 25 to show some other examples of the pregame. Like I said, you're not going to see the exact same one every time. Sometimes they'll also kind of flip the angles of stuff to make it look a little different, of course, but you do have some different scenes that you will see pre-game, just running through some different stuff that you will see when you start the game, which I kind of like. I like, even if it's just a small tweak, I don't want to see the exact same thing every single time that I load into a game. That's the kind of stuff that makes it not get stale as quick. So you can see just running through a few different variations here of different warm-ups that you might see when you play, but they also still do have last year's pre-game in here as well, so you can still get this variation, which again, I don't mind that from the standpoint of I don't see the same thing every single game. And it seems like to me when it's like a bigger game or a rivalry game, you're more likely to get the more cinematic pregame with the shots like in the studio, but you can still get this one as well. Now let's look at the Super Bowl celebration. This is always a big topic. So this time around, they updated the Super Bowl celebration after 3 years. They didn't make us wait 5. So they're getting a little better with it. I still think they should give us multiple different versions. I think that would make most people happy, but I think this is probably the best Super Bowl celebration we've seen, at least in the last couple generations, because it just looks a little more accurate. The older ones sometimes would just have a couple scenes in there that just didn't quite seem to fit. And this time they actually visibly show the losing team being a little bit more upset about losing. They got Randy Moss walking the trophy out this year. Last year, I think it just looked like one of those random generated assistant coaches. So slight upgrade there. They're still going to have the stage. They're going to show the Super Bowl MVP. They have Roger Goodell and all that stuff. So I think it's pretty cool. I like what they did with the Super Bowl presentation this year. And if you lose the Super Bowl, they're going to show it kind of from a slightly different vantage point as well. So here's a quick clip of losing the Super Bowl, for example. You're going to get mostly the same celebration, but they're going to cut it off before the trophy presentation and stuff like that, because if you lose the Super Bowl, you would just head to the back and they'll kind of show one of your players visibly frustrated as it cuts off. Now let's look at the player movement. So player movement is still pretty much the same in my opinion. They tweak this every year, but the speed of the players, the movement, it's pretty much the same as it's been since Madden 21 went over to new consoles, where, it's not like college football at all. It's not super fast. It's not super snappy. Now they did redo the ball carrier moves. The juke is not as fast this year. Last year, the juke was pretty OP, so they did kind of touch that up. The spin move, however, is faster and snappier this year, so I do like that. They made the spin a lot better, in my opinion, for 25. They also redid all the hesitations, so now you get more realistic hesitations, in my opinion, some high steps, some better kind of breakdowns, whereas the old system, I didn't really care for that too much. Moving on to signature animations, you'll notice all the top QBs have signature animations. They kind of do what they do in real life when they approach the line. They stand the way that they stand. They will also audible the way that they audible in real life, so most of those top players are going to be more unique, which I like. I think it differentiates players. You can notice that they're doing pretty much exactly what they do in real life. Pay attention now, Mahomes audibles. It's a little bit more different than it was last year. But yeah, all the top guys are going to kind of have their player likeness on field, which I think is a pretty cool thing. Some of the top players are going to run like themselves as well. Christian McCaffrey, the cover boy, you can see he runs just like himself. And players also now look around more to be aware of their surroundings. You can see Isaiah Pacheco is another example. Last year, he just ran generic. This year, he runs more like he does in real life, which I think is a cool touch to the game. It makes it look like the real player. Now let's take a look at the updated face scans. Now I did a video on this yesterday, which I will link below, but I did miss a couple. I did miss that Mahomes got an updated scan, so now he looks a lot better. We also got Christian McCaffrey, who got a slight update. Again, I did a video on all of the new player likeness yesterday with updated ones, rookies, players that finally got their face scans in the game. We're going to show some of them here in this video for comparison's sake, but if you want to see the full list, you can watch that in the link below. As you just saw, we had Jordan Love. Now we have Calvin Ridley. These are some of the guys that got updated. Daniel Jones finally got the newer gen face scan, and also for Kirk Cousins, he got his in the game now as well. And here's a few notable players that finally got their scans in the game, like Kenneth Walker. We've got Puka Nacua, breakout star from last season. We've got some other breakout guys like Jahmyr Gibbs of the Lions right here. Also got his teammate Sam Laporta. So they did a really good job this year adding more scans than they've had before. We've got Josh Downs from the Colts. Again, full video on this is linked below if you want to see every single one. I'm just showing some of the more notable ones. Here's some of the rookies like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. They got more rookies in the game this year than they have probably ever as far as I remember. Got Drake May as well. Usually they'll have like 3 to 8 rookies. Got Marvin Harrison Jr. But this year, they got like over 20, 25 of them. Got Malik Neighbors in the game as well, looking pretty on point. We've also got Adonai Mitchell. This is a rookie that I did forget to include in yesterday's video, so I'm putting it in this one. He's also in the game. Here's a shot of Nate Wiggins, another first-round player, cornerback for the Ravens. So those are the face scans. They also updated equipment and player models. If you noticed last year, they still kind of had the smaller helmets, kind of made their heads look small. Now they've got the more proportional helmets, and I don't think this is fixed for every player yet. I think it's an ongoing thing, but you could see the pads, the helmet, just the body itself. It seems like they got them a lot more accurate this year. Last year, they looked a little out of whack. Another nice little touch of realism that they added this year was they updated the helmets to feature the new NFL Heritage helmet decals for the players that are from other countries. So that's pretty cool to see that they've added that to the game as well. Here's a look at the main menu screen for 24 versus 25. They've kind of streamlined it a little bit more, made it look more simple with real NFL footage in the back. I think more people prefer that versus the style they had been doing. Here's a quick look at the play selection screen. I like this year's better, of course. Last year's just looked kind of boring compared to this year's, so they updated that a little bit. Here's a look at the franchise selection screen. I really like what they did this year. They give you more information about the teams instead of just basically the overall. Here's a quick look at the player cards inside of franchise mode. They made a little update here to refresh it. And here is franchise mode from the main menu. So they did a UI overall this year, and you actually can get a lot more information from the first page because you can now flick the right stick over. So on the left, you have your kind of your tasks and things you can do. Then you can flick the right stick over to view a bunch of different information, which I really like. So you can access all of this from the home page. You can then scroll down on the right stick to see some of the social media. But then if you tab over, you still do have the dedicated social media tab, which is pretty similar, just a slight facelift to it. Nothing too major there. Same with the standing screen. They just gave a little slight facelift to these things, made it look a little bit newer. Now here's a nice change that I was really surprised by. I'm doing a super sim, and this is going to take about 20 seconds. I'm simulating to the NFL draft from preseason week 1. And as we get to the end of this in a few seconds, you'll notice that in Madden 25, we're on like week 7 or week 8 versus Madden 24. It's still at the end of the preseason. So the super sim definitely is much faster this year, which I think is a really, really good quality of life update. Speaking of the NFL draft, this is one of the biggest updates for franchise mode this year. You'll see you now have a big draft board where you can see the previous picks, which is a nice touch. The old draft had been very, very outdated. A lot of people wanted this changed, and they finally did change it. You've got Roger Goodell at the podium. He'll be announcing the picks. You'll see the player come out. So it looks more like you're watching a real NFL draft. He'll meet Roger Goodell, then he'll hold up the jersey to take the picture. Whereas last year, all you saw was just a player pop up on a board. So that's pretty cool. For later draft picks, you'll see clips of the war room for the teams, and then you will see the players at home holding up the hat, which is pretty cool. Then you'll also get an instant draft grade that tells you how you did. Now let's take a look at the weather side by side. So for the rain, it looks about the same to me. I don't notice any differences. They haven't really updated this since they went over to Madden 21 on the new consoles. It's still the same. However, they finally did update the snow. There's no more light snow. It's just regular snow now when you select weather options. And this looks a ton better. This looks like a heavy snow game, which I love. Also notice last year how the snow looks at the back walls and on the sideline versus this year, it looks a lot better and it's a lot more of it. And the coaches will now wear more appropriate attire when it is snowing. You'll see they wear the big jackets now. Last year, they just wore kind of like that regular windbreaker. Now they wear the big jacket, which is cool. Here's a look at the crowd side by side. Now, graphically, I don't really think much changed here. It looks about the same. The only thing I noticed is that the Madden 25 crowd does seem to move more for regular plays and then also big plays. You just see a little bit more movement, more jumping. So that's about it. Here's a look at the Madden 24 sideline. Now, I don't really think much changed here. They did say that they updated sideline reactions. I haven't played it enough to really see every scenario, but you can see they have some movement. They get hype a little bit for big plays, nothing too crazy. Here, we're looking at Madden 25. To me, it looks about the exact same other than graphically looking a slight bit better. The movements on the sideline don't seem to be much different. Let's take a look at the grass because this actually was updated this year. They did it in college football and they also did it for Madden. We now have 3D turf and 3D grass, and not the biggest deal in the world, but it does visually make the game look a lot better in my opinion. Now, going over to the broadcast cam, this is where I think you will notice a difference. This is Madden 23, of course. You could tell by the scoreboard, and You know, broadcast cam looks fine with Madden. I don't think it looks awful or anything, but you'll notice this year, it looks a lot more like a real NFL game. When you notice these clips here, jumping over to 24, number one, the scoreboard just looks better, but the defensive players move around pre-play now. They don't kind of just get in their spot and stand there. They communicate with each other. They hold their hands up. They drift around. They step up. They backpedal before the snap, and that makes it look like a real NFL broadcast. Like some of these clips, sometimes when I'm watching, if I glance at it, I could think, hey, this looks like a pretty real game, which I think is cool. So for people that like to watch broadcast in their franchise, I think this is a nice upgrade. Now, if you want to find out about the 25 coolest new things you can actually do in Madden 25, make sure to check out this video right here on the screen.